My landlord's selling. What comes next? We're going to give you the rundown this morning. It's a scary time, but rest assured, it's all going to be all right. Morning, Jess.
Morning.
How are we?
Good. It's our first one together.
Our first morning minutes together. We've certainly had plenty of time in the office together.
But it's never done one of these.
Never done a morning minutes. How are we?
Good. It was nice. And Young Gun's back.
We're back. Another episode.
Yeah. No, it was a nice run in this morning. It was quiet on the roads.
Yeah, I do love getting in it a little bit earlier. The traffic is so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
But this topic's quite a big one because obviously we're having this conversation every other day, bringing properties to market. Often they're tenanted properties, and it's not a nice phone call to sort of make or an email to send, advising someone the property's going on the market.
No, it's always a little bit uncomfortable. So the way that I usually will let the tenant know, I give them a call first, and they're usually a little bit shocked, and then I send the email. It's not as scary as it sounds, but that first phone call is a little bit scary because for majority of tenants, 9 out of 10, this hasn't happened before and they don't really know what's going to happen next. Yeah,
that's it. And if they've been in the property for a while or, in some cases they've only just settled in, it can be a little bit distressing thinking that, now they've got to move again or they've got to move for the first time. And obviously it's a big process moving. It's not easy.
Not only that, it's inconvenient.
So, yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, having to clean your house. So, for example, the first week that we launch a sales campaign, generally we'll come into the property for photography, floor planner. We do it's called a sales caravan. So all of us will go through and we have a look in the property and then 2 open homes. That's a lot of people in your house.
Yeah, and for people that, especially weren't used to that, we've had a couple of years off visitors with COVID. When we were first sort of having these conversations, people were a little bit, reluctant to give access. But we're going to sort of walk you through the process of what happens when a notice of sale gets sent, from the agent's perspective and then the tenants as well.
So first thing, I think it's important that everyone knows their rights and obligations in the situation. So first and foremost, as a tenant, obviously you don't own the property, so it's not your choice what happens. The vendor has every right to sell the property. And I think that's kind of the most important thing that you have to remember.
Yep, absolutely. And equally, there's a lot of guidelines on fair trading and especially in your tenancy lease agreement as to what, you can work with the tenant and what your rights are as well. So it's always best and mutually beneficial when it's smooth. And 9 times out of 10 it is. But if you're ever in doubt, refer back to those websites or your lease, and it will give you a really good indication of where both sort of parties sit.
Because at the end of the day, the quicker that the property is sold, the better it is for everyone. The tenant has less people coming into their property. They get to know what their next steps are. And it's a smooth process all around. So first things first, the legislation and kind of the rights for the tenant. When you get your notice of sale, there is 14 days notice given.
Yep.
So you are allowed, if you're not ready in that 14 days to start open homes, you're allowed to say, I want to wait my 14 days.
That's it. So the first step's an email. And that's where we often follow up with a call. Out of courtesy. It's a good opportunity for, as the agent, just introduce the team in a sort of friendly manner over the phone. Just get a bit of an idea as to whether tenants are working from home or what their arrangements are, how we can make it sort of as easy as possible so we're not, in their hair too much. And just get a bit of an idea so we're all on the same page.
And in that conversation as well, I think something that I always try to stress is the tenants don't have to worry. They are protected by their lease agreement, because the first thought that people have is, oh my God, property's selling, I've got to leave, which isn't necessarily the case.
That's it. So if you're in a fixed term lease, you're obviously protected up until those dates. And then if you're on a continuation lease, again, you don't have to move out instantly. Some people freak out, again, especially when this is not happening to them on a regular basis. They're thinking, oh, I've got to move out next week. That's definitely not the case. You don't need to stress. And then, talk to your agent and they can walk you through what that looks like for your like individual circumstance.
Even if you are on a month to month too, you are given a significant time frame. So if the vendor or landlord chooses to have the property vacant for the selling process, they still have to give you 90 days notice. At the time of sale, then that turns to a 30 days notice. But if you're on a fixed term, then it will remain for the entire of your agreement. So you'll be safe. If my lease ends in December, you don't have to move out until you get notice 30 days before the end of your agreement, which would be in December.
Yeah, cool. So that's sort of the first step. So once you've both spoken to the agent and the agent sort of contacted the tenant, as Jess mentioned, you book in the sort of particulars leading up to getting the property ready. So that's often photos and things like that. And then once you're on market, usually there's 2 open homes a week.
Yeah.
These normally stick to a Wednesday and a Saturday. But, in some cases we had a tenant that really couldn't do a Saturday and we did a Sunday instead. So I think just communication with the agent is a big one. We've also had tenants that work irregular hours, like a bartender, for example. And so he's almost nocturnal, sleeps during the day. So we pushed all the open homes into the afternoon. I think communication is just, important all around.
For sure. And also I think giving plenty of notice of when the open homes will be. So legally, you're required to give 48 hours notice. However, like for us, we both do our open home times Saturdays after the open for the next Wednesday, Saturday, and Wednesday. So you get almost, in some cases, 10 days notice of an open home rather than just the 2 days. And it makes it a lot easier for everyone. Yeah.
So as Jess said, always in preparation for the week ahead at times there. It helps, the tenant to plan ahead because, obviously you're working with 2 sets of calendars here. You've got, another person's calendars and with work and things like that. So it's definitely an inconvenience. Lisa said there, a tenant can break the lease during the sales campaign up until 7. Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So if you're not happy or you think, like we had a property where they thought it might be quite hard to find another townhouse, which was what they were looking for, but they jumped on realestate.com, found one that would suit and went straight away.
Which it then brings up is whether or not you should even start looking. Some people hold out hope that the property will be purchased by an investor and then you can stay. And some people prefer to start looking for another place and then that 2 weeks notice period is granted, which is a good option.
Yeah, well, that's right. Remember, guys, you've got up until settlement if you want to give your 2 weeks notice. So officially the property is marked as sold, but it's not settled. So that means it's not gone on to a new ownership. So you do have that bit of time. Michael said there, having to prepare an open home is a huge inconvenience. Absolutely it is. For an owner-occupier, obviously, it's just as much work, tenants as well. What compensation options are available? Rent reductions are definitely on the table. It's a nice incentive and I guess, a way for a landlord to, thank the tenant in advance for, helping them make the property look the best it can be. Presenting nice for open homes.
And not only that, it's also a free question for the tenant to ask. So because it is an inconvenience, you can ask the agent to ask the landlord on your behalf if a rent reduction would be an option to compensate, especially for like the amount of time spent cleaning. Sometimes you'll have to move your things out of the way. It often happens when there is significant changes that have been requested of the tenant of the property. So moving some furniture out or moving things around so it presents a little bit nicer. Often there'll be a rent reduction as compensation for that. But if you are the tenant and you think you're entitled to it, you can ask. They might say no, they might say no. Yes, there's no obligation to do it, but it's a free question.
I think so. Free question is the best question. And you don't ask, you don't get. So rather than sort of feeling all tense about it, just have a casual chat through the agent and then put the question out there.
Right.
We've got a couple of other questions. again, it's an opinion, right? So
Yeah.
I think it varies from situation to situation.
And some people as well, like their properties, sometimes it affects tenants in different ways. So if you're someone that's working from home, that you have like lots of children and there's things everywhere, and then having to organize your kids and then work, and there's 1,000 things going on, it might be a huge inconvenience for you to have the open homes. For someone that is out of the house, they live by themselves, they keep the house pretty clean.
Yep.
It's not that much of an inconvenience. So it really just depends person to person. Like you said with the bartender, it was much more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Luke sort of summed it up there. Everyone's got a little bit of flexibility, and it's obviously an uncertain time, but take it case by case, guys. You can't sort of give an exact book to work by. In sort of standard rent, so it's not like a rent reduction as such, it's a rebate. So it's often paid at the end of the campaign, whether it sells or not, but it's often paid at the end. It's usually based on about $50 a week or something like that.
Yeah. Somewhere between 20 to 50, depending.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the property. If we're talking a big home, it might be a little bit more.
And like we said, the landlord has no obligation to say yes. So they can say no if they want to, but sometimes they say yes because, like we said before, it's in the best interest of every party that it sells quickly. So oftentimes they'll be willing to pay that little bit amount in order to make it a smoother process, and so it gets sold faster.
Yeah, it definitely goes a long way. If you're a landlord, just being able to offer that at the front of the campaign, it's a nice gesture.
Yeah.
It does go a long way. It makes a huge difference. That everyone's on the same side, working towards the same goal. Certainly makes our job a lot easier, and ultimately, a property that is not presenting the best it can affect the sale price.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Okay.
So we've talked about getting property on the market. Once you're sort of sold,
yes,
then what happens?
So then it's a lot of communication with the agent, because first thing that they will probably tell you is whether or not it is an investor or someone that wants to occupy the property. If it's an investor, that will likely, not all the time, but can oftentimes mean that you will be able to stay. Sometimes, as it's a new landlord, there might be changes in rent. So that's another thing to take into account. There's no guarantee that after your fixed term ends that the rent will stay the same because it is a different landlord.
Yep, that's right.
If it's an owner occupier, then what happens?
So there will be notice given to you guys either way. So you're going to have plenty of time in advance. Communication from the agent is always important. You might even hear from the rental department. If it's an agency like ours, for example, we have a property management team that looks after all of our tenants and landlords. So often we've got like WhatsApp groups going where you're talking with the selling agents and then the property managers as well. But any questions, shoot it back, and they'll be able to help you. Another one I wanted to mention is, like, obviously open homes stop. The only other real appointment that we often try and book in with tenants is like a pre-settlement inspection.
Yeah. So that's about, it depends, usually 10 minutes, half an hour, depending on the property.
Yep.
What that means in that is, so pretty much it's to check that for the purchaser, that when they bought the property and now before settlement, there's been no changes. So they'll come through and usually they just turn on all the lights, check the walls, check the stovetop works. It doesn't really affect the tenant, and it's a quick walk through,
Yep.
but it's something that we just have to do.
Yeah, it's usually 2 weeks sort of before settlement. A question there about tenants' belongings and things like that in photos. It can be removed digitally. So what we can do with virtual furniture is take out, pieces of furniture, family photos, things like that. But if you don't want them in the photo, the best thing is sort of, if you can, just take them out.
A lot of the time too, when we go to, so when photos are done, the agent will be there with the photographer, and we sort of direct and we say our opinion. So often we're moving things as well. So if there is like a big stack of those photo frames that are connected, we can move them. And the tenant's often there too. So we can physically remove them and digitally remove them as well.
It's very easy to work around.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that covers almost, I think, everything. The last part, we wanted to mention is, along with the communication, it's so important. But if you feel like you want to move out, at the start, or you're going to start looking for a place, at Novak, we're the largest rental agency on the Northern Beaches. So we're privy to a lot of what's coming on the market, and we often have, many properties available that might suit you. So we can often, refer you to another property that you might want some more info on or something like that.
For sure. But we need to know what's going on. So we'll be telling you each step and what we're doing, but we kind of need the same. So it's good from the tenant, if the tenant's letting us know, I'm started to go into open homes, I've started doing this, I've started doing that, because that way we can also help.
Yep. And Lisa sort of summed it up there. It's honestly just, being, just treating people the right way, on being on the same page with communication.
And being kind to people. I think sometimes the tenants think that when a sales campaign's happening, that the sales agents are just going to jump in and completely disregard them. It's not like that at all. We want to all work together to find a good solution for everyone. So it's just about being nice to people. That's it.
And it always does work out, well. It's stressful at the start, but by the end of it, it's all worked out nicely.
For sure. I think that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Some good numbers there this morning.
Yeah.
We hope we've sort of clarified a few things there for tenants, owners. If you're ever in doubt, reach out. We can give you a bit more info. And it's all case by case, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, perfect.
That's it. Enjoy your day.
Enjoy your day. Billy, do you want to do the outro?
I'll roll the outro.
Yeah.
We've got one more question, actually.
Oh.
Something that we, our little like herbs and spices secret, we use WhatsApp groups for everyone to keep everyone updated. It's a nice, easy way to keep it all on the mobile for people that are not on emails and things like that. If people are overseas, for landlords or whatever, partners are overseas, that's the best way.
Yeah.
So often we've got a WhatsApp group running where we can keep all those updates in one place. That's the show.
That's the show. Morning.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good day.